here we go on the recording. All right, well, welcome to our third for this particular year town hall meeting for the members of Roswell. For those of you that are kind of regular attenders, part of Roswell Community Church on a regular basis, we're so glad you get to be a part of this. It's a great opportunity for you to ask questions. Again, I mentioned this just a minute ago, but down at the bottom there is a Q&A section. You could click on that, ask any question along the way. Again, I'll be stopping at a couple different portions to answer questions along the way as we talk about a variety of different things. And then at the end, as long as we have questions, we'll keep talking until we have answers. So as best we can. The only other thing I was going to say is there is a chat feature down at the bottom, so you can also use that. And on all the Q&As, you can also say that you really like a question, and it'll actually make it a little bit higher priority. So if something is particularly interesting to you on the questions, feel free to go ahead and say, hey, I'd like to hear more about that, or yes, please do talk about that, and that would be helpful for me. So we're going to go ahead and jump on in. So again, greetings, welcome. I'm so glad you guys get to be with us. I'm going to go and share the screen, show you some slides along the way so we can kind of be all on the same page. So here we go on the on our town hall. I'm up in the right-hand corner here. Hopefully you can all see me well. We're going to jump in first with the area of just financials. What does the financial picture look like for us as we hit the end of our third quarter? Well, you can see, for those of you that aren't familiar, we began our fiscal year on August 1st and we ended on July 31st. So we're 9 months into our fiscal year, 9 months of COVID, 9 months of our fiscal year. And our budget set for those particular 9 months, it was about $570,000. And you can see that the giving has been just underneath that at about $553,000. So a shortfall over these 9 months of about $17,000, which all said and done is really, really good news. There's been a tremendous amount of generosity on y'all's part, which has just been super, super encouraging. I'm going to show you just a little bit of a picture of what the last what kind of the last 14 months or so have looked like, from February of 2020, if you will, all the way to through April of 2021. You can kind of see the orange line in the middle there is the budget line item. So that's kind of where our budget is. And the green line is kind of what the giving goes from month to month. So you can see that kind of giving has been up and down throughout the time. Christmas, December is often and usually a very significant giving month in the church, in the life of the church. And many of you were incredibly generous this particular Christmas. And so as you can see, that kind of leaves us with these ups and these downs. We're several months a little bit under the budget line. And so, but overall over the year, we feel in a pretty good place. So we just want to thank you once again for your continued generosity. And if you have questions on the financial piece that I can illuminate, I'd be glad to. The numbers that you see there, the 92 at the front, 92 at the top, 85, those are all numbers of the families, number of families or giving families at Roswell that have given on that particular month, unique giving families. So that's kind of gives you a sense of the number of families that are contributing. So again, thank you for those of you that are a part of giving to the mission and life of Roswell Community Church, of making possible the movement of the kingdom, the spread of the gospel, the encouragement of the saints, the community of believers. It's just a really cool thing to get to be a part of. So thank you for being a part of that with us. So that's the financial picture. Let's talk a little bit about what the attendance picture looks like. What has it been like for folks to come to Roswell? Well, you can see here that though we have been distanced, we have been together, and actually increasingly together. We've now surpassed on a Sunday for the past several weeks, all the way through April. We were over 100 plus in attendance in the service. So we soon will be breaking that kind of 50% of where we were pre-COVID live in the service. What's interesting is that the home viewing has really not shifted much on an average as far as through YouTube, Broadcast, and Facebook. So I'll end up with about 80 families or so that are, or 80 viewing units. So it could be families of 1 or 8 for all we know, that are still participating online on a regular basis. So that's kind of what the numbers on the attendance have looked like in the past really 2 to 3 months here, particularly the last month on average. So that's kind of the attendance picture per se. And so I want to jump into kind of what that means for us. One of the things that everyone's kind of trying to figure out, and frankly, on the church world, everyone's trying to understand and figure out, how do we move forward from where we are now towards some form of normalcy moving forward? So The attendance movement has been encouraging, but one of the things, this is fresh off the charts today from the CDC, is vaccinations at this point are at 58.5, actually as of 6 a.m. this morning. 58.5 of the American population has received at least their first vaccine. Somewhere around 44.7 have received both doses. So we're past that, kind of moving towards that greater threshold of more and more people being vaccinated, and all those who are wanting to have the opportunity. I think most of those of you that I've talked to on Sunday mornings live have already received at least your first dose, but most of you have been fully vaccinated now for a little while, which is super encouraging and really changes the format and dynamics of where we are. So for us, as we've been kind of looking at that, looking at where we are as a church, looking at what's needed, and trying to understand the implications for us as we try to figure out what being together can look like going forward. The trends, as I said, are really good. This is the picture of kind of the COVID trend over the course of the last several months. This is again straight from the Georgia Department of Health, and you can see that, from that large surge over the winter time there, starting at the beginning of the year there, it's been a significant drop, and the last 7 days have been an even steeper drop to areas lower than they were at almost any part since the beginning of the pandemic. So we're at a really exciting place as far as moving towards normalcy. I know a lot of us don't have the muscles, whereas a lot of uncertainty. I think we were even being at the night of worship together and being able to be together with so many people outside. It was such a great experience, but it also felt unique to be unmasked around so many people. And so I know that's kind of where things are at, right? This is what the trends are looking like. This is what the data shows. I actually read something from the MIT report that talked about the reality of post-vaccination infections are just, they're basically almost nil, 0.008%. The fatalities out of the 87 million people who at the time had been vaccinated are 1 in 257,000, which is about 80,000 more than likelihood of being struck by lightning. So it's really encouraging to say, like, if you've been vaccinated, you're in a really good spot to be able to be kind of COVID free and not at risk there. So anyway, so that's kind of what the trends are. We recognize also that some of y'all are not going to be vaccinated and not interested in being vaccinated. And of course, that is absolutely your choice. But so we're trying to navigate all those pieces in light of also what we've learned even from the survey from y'all. So here's the plan going forward for us as a church in the weeks and months ahead. Starting on June 6th, which is 4 Sundays from now, we're going to move away from mandatory masks in the service on Sunday mornings to optional masks. Obviously, you have the total freedom to be able to wear masks in the church, but starting on June 6th, we will no longer have mandatory masks in the service. Starting on that date. We will be continuing through the summer months at this point. Again, everything's subject to holding those things loosely, but at this point through the summer, we're going to continue to use the masking system in the kids' hall with kids volunteers, et cetera. For a couple different reasons. One of those being just the proximity, the opportunity for kids and adults to be in close proximity with one another, and kind of just phasing that in as we head towards August, where at that point, assuming things are well and there's a continued trend towards the lowering of cases, et cetera, that we'll be able to be back to a normal operations, if you will, in the month of August. So that's what we're aiming towards. So we're going to take this step here in June towards kind of ending the mandatory mask section. So that's 4 Sundays from now. So it's not this week, but 4 Sundays from now on June 6th. So that's where we're heading. One of the things that was really interesting as we received the survey, and as y'all shared a little bit of what of kind of where you're at. And again, as a church, we represent a little bit of the reality of our country, right? We have some folks that have been very ready, and actually some of y'all that are really have been wanting to come back, but are not ready to come back, having to wear masks and feeling it stuffy while you're doing worship. And so we had about a third break. We had a third of folks that said that they'll return back to regular services once we're not having masks in the service anymore. And about a third of folks that said we won't return back if there's not masks in the service. So we're kind of in this real tension place with, of course, another third in the middle that kind of was ready to come back either way. So we're kind of in that real tension place. And so we're going to move in this direction, of course, continuing to make available for those of you that are not ready, the opportunity to worship online with all of the online connections that way. So that's the plan moving forward as it relates to kind of masks in particular. We're going to continue the distancing going forward up until that up through the summer at this point. That's our plan, and we're still working out some of the registration pieces as to what that might look like. So at this point, we're probably still going to hold on to registrations, but we're not entirely sure. Obviously, we'll need to register with children through the summer. So those are the plans as they stand right now. Again, we'll be talking about this a little bit more as a church, of course, from the front, so everybody's aware of that. So that's some of the movement on when it comes to that. So I want to go ahead and just take a pause here, and let me go off screen share and jump into opportunities for any questions. I imagine there would be some questions. Let me pull up questions. No questions. Well, this is terrific. Any questions around anything, any of the financial pieces, attendance, anything related to kind of moving back into worship, or any of those elements that I could kind of jump into? You can go down to the Q&A portion at the bottom here and type anything in. So I'll give you just a minute here if you want to put anything in there. I'd be more than glad to answer that as we go. So give you a second if you have some questions. I know it put your name on there, so it's a little bit, it's here. Oh, there's one. Michael, thank you. Okay, how might the budget shortfall affect the budget for federal year 2022? Yeah, thanks for asking that. Well, one of the things that we work really hard on, Michael, is to make sure that we're keeping our expenses in light of where our the actual giving comes. And so at this point, we're still under from an expense standpoint over as compared to budget. And so we seek to try and keep expenses always under whatever the giving is, unless there's some kind of unforeseen dynamic. So what we'll do is we look at financial year 2021, 2022, which will start on August 1. What we'll do is we'll look at this past year, look at some of the trends and where things seem to be, and then we'll adjust budget in light of that, as well as a process of praying and asking God, okay, Lord, what do you have us to do? What do you want us to move towards? And is there particular areas of investment that we haven't thought about at this point? But we're working pretty hard right now to make sure our expenses are even under our budget. So great question. Cool, awesome. The other question here, Millie, how does having online service impact the budget? That's a great question. I don't know that it's honestly kind of hard to know. Folks have moved significantly to online giving. I'm sure that's probably been most of you. Many have also moved to kind of online bank giving. So every once in a while, there are some folks that are putting things in the boxes as we used to back in the day, way back in 2019. But overall, it seems like folks have been continued to be really faithful in their giving, and so that's been genuinely encouraging, the faithfulness of the people of God to the mission of God through His church. So. But just a couple of things on the survey that emerged on the worship side, as far as just the experience of worship, it was a pretty marked difference for those that were experiencing the positive experience of worship live versus the experience of enjoyment or meaningfulness of the service when you're at home. And it didn't matter generation, with the exception, I take that back, with the exception of baby boomers. Most of the baby boomers were okay live or online. That was a pretty close kind of meaningfulness, was not significantly different. For the millennials, many of you who have little kids with you, I talked to somebody on Sunday who was just lamenting the reality of trying to have their hearts connected to the life of Christ when their 2 or 3 year olds are running around screaming. So for millennials, it was a pretty massive gap between the difference between the meaningfulness of the service at home versus online, virtually versus live, which is of course one of the reasons why I'm trying to move as much as possible towards having as many people who can come back and be live in the service. The other thing too, that surface in the service and now and in the survey, and I think this is terrific. I had to smile. It was an exciting optimism. About I think over 90% of those who were surveyed said that they plan on, once COVID is over, like on the other side, when there is like that thing is COVID that happened way back then. Once that happens, that somewhere around 90% were planning on being at services 3 times or more a month, with about 70% wanting to be there 4 or 5 times a month. So I know that statistically, that's not actually how it plays out for most of us. But nonetheless, that was actually a genuine encouragement. I think that's a desire to be able to be together instead, and to be in a room and to be able to experience both live worship, live teaching, and live community, candidly, over even the comfort of pajamas and a cup of coffee. So, and one day we'll have coffee again too. So anyway, all right, well, I'm gonna move on. Looks like we're kind of pausing the questions. Any other questions you have about any of the stuff we've already talked about, feel free to throw them up. We'll keep talking and come back to answer questions about some of the other pieces. So I gave you a couple elements related to the survey already. So let me go ahead and jump into some of the other pieces about it. One of the things that's just kind of just general information about the survey, let me go ahead and pop the screen share back up. One of the things that emerged out of the survey, one was we had a little bit of a lower participation this time than we have in the past few years. We did one in 2018, 16, and 14, and about 49% of kind of RCCers were able to participate from just a number standpoint. So that was a little lower, which is making us trying to understand a little bit better what the data looks like. One of the things that was not surprising, but is marked and significant, is that over about 30% of, not quite, yeah, right around 30% of those that call RCC home started coming in 2018 or later. So of the surveyed folks, almost a third of the church has been 2018 or later, which means that a lot of you who've either come recently, just know you're a part of a whole set of people, of almost a third of the church, that have come recently in the last 3 years. And also for those of you that have been around for a longer period of time, and you look around, especially after a year of masking and being apart, and say, boy, I don't recognize some people. I don't know these people. And I think I had several people say that about the night of worship, the outdoor community night of worship on Sunday, was just that there were so many people that people didn't know. And to me, that's just an exciting reality. One, that we're a community that continues to grow and to invite new people into our fellowship. But also, it's a realization of like, we're gonna have to continue to move towards one another and get to know one another again, or get to know one another for the first time. But 30% is not a small number. So just know, if you're new, hey, good news. You're part of a bunch of people that are new. If you're not new, just know there's a whole bunch of people that you don't know that you get to know and get to meet now. So pretty exciting stuff. Another just general demographic, if you're curious, our church is made up of roughly about 50% millennial, somewhere around 26% Gen X, and about 24% baby boomer. So we didn't have anyone on the Z side quite yet, because we're right on that cusp with that. But that's kind of where the adults that surveyed fell in that category. So that's general information about the survey. A couple other pieces that were significant, I think were kind of particularly encouraging. One, the survey showed that, and this is good news, that there's been a significant improvement in engagement in Scripture this year. If you remember, we surveyed folks saying, hey, what was your engagement in Scripture last year at this time, and what's true today? And of course, with a significant movement and thrust and energy to have folks be in the Word, then of course, like, this is a huge deal to see so many people. And I'm talking like a marked difference from like a 5.1 to a 7.7 for some of the demographics. So that was super encouraging. It's really good to know that not because of perfection, right? Because it's not about perfection, but about that there's been a significant movement of folks getting to spend more time in the Word and allowing it to do good things, not perfect things, and not for everyone, but significant nonetheless. And this is kind of some of what it's looked like. And if we combine it all together, we have about as a community, as a church, we've read over 2,000 books of the Bible since the beginning of September. So 2,000 books of the Bible been read by our community, which is just a fun number to look at and be like, that's how much we've all read. A little over 60 folks have read and finished and completed the entirety of the Old Testament. And many read other sections of it or are still working through sections of it. And we've had, of course, new folks jump in and begin again or begin into the New Testament. So kind of an exciting time. Obviously, since this has been a significant move on our part, it was the most significant growth of any area this past year for those that were surveyed, which was pretty cool and affirming. The other thing that surfaced out of the survey, which was we were just kind of curious. One of the things we wanted to get a sense of was how are folks engaged in other areas, other mission organizations, missionaries, local schools, local mission organizations, missionaries in particular? What does that look like for the people at our church? And so we kind of just asked you, hey, listen, if you're a part of giving or serving or championing a particular other organization, let us know. We had over 120 different organizations that were engaged by the surveyors, which is over 129 surveys, and which was really, really encouraging that there's a whole bunch of you who have a heart that is not just for the local church. As I said, many of you are very generous towards our church and serve, but are also connected in a variety of different ways. And what was so cool to see was the variety from campus ministry stuff to, Billy Graham Foundation to, it was new organizations, old organizations, local organizations, international organizations. It was very, very cool. So anyway, that was just kind of something to celebrate, that we have a people as a church that whose hearts actually pour themselves out all over the world and all even over our city in very significant ways. It's just cool. It's really cool to see. So excited to be a part of this kind of community together. So that's another thing that emerged. One of the things that kind of surfaced as probably one of the greatest growth opportunities when we surveyed you, say, hey, what are some of the things that you're wanting to grow in most significantly in this next year, with the exception of devotional life, which always wins the cake at every time we've ever done this. It always wins. Everyone wants to pray and read their Bible more every time. That's always a given. So with the exception of that, the other two very, very significant areas were the area of calling and the area of community. Folks wanting to be in more significant community, though overall there was a real steadiness about community over the past year, which says a lot in the midst of COVID, that those surveyed said that they were in as good of or as stable of or as meaningful of a communal experience as they were a year ago, which again, that was super encouraging to know that. And for many of you, actually for some of you, that's been the bedrock of stability, and even church and kind of Christian fellowship connection has been through your community group or through a committed community of folks. So I'm just really glad to see that. But at the same time, there's a desire for more, and not just community, but also a sense of calling, a sense of what am I made for? What do I want? What has God made me to get? What gets me up in the morning that I know I'm supposed to give myself to, that I long to be a part of more intentionally? And that emerged as a pretty tangible area of growth and expectancy and hope. So the good news is, and this is, good news is that's actually where we're heading. So as we look at the 6-year movement of what we've been focused on as a church to become the kind of people who are going to be moving into the life of Christ being poured in us, and allowing his life and his grace to fill us more and more, and on top of that to be the kind of people who move out with the life of Christ. We've kind of been on a journey, this 6-year journey around this vision, with year 1 being the kind of people who hear and respond to God, and we take faith-filled steps of courage and risk with our lives, our money, our friendships, our relationships. And then this year, as you know, we're seeking to be the kind of people who are grounded in God's word. And so we've been doing that. We've been pounding our hearts into the scripture and allowing the scripture to start to yield in our souls. And as we head to next year, as we anticipate moving into the next ministry year, we're going to be focusing our energies, our teaching, our training, our equipping around the area of living out our calling in community. What are we made for? What gets us up in the morning? What is the kinds of things that God has uniquely, particularly, specifically invited and called us into? How has he formed us in a way that prepares us for the kind of works, the good works that he has for us in particular to do, as not just in general to do as the church? And so we're going to be focusing on that. So what's cool is like, hey, basically the survey said, hey, this is some areas I'd like to understand and know more about. And it's like, hey, good news. This is some of what we're going to focus on over the course of this next year. So stay tuned for that, but just wanted to let you know, hey, we hear you and we're on it. This is where we're heading. So one of the, just another side piece has been the really good feedback we've gotten, and the encouraging things we've heard back from y'all as a leadership team, both staff and particular elders, as well as some of the women's leadership team, have been reaching out to the people in our church, to the body, just checking in, saying, hey, what's going on? Is there anything you need prayer for? Is there anything weighty on your hearts right now? And it's been this really significant time. And what I just want to say is what's been beautiful is how many of you have let let us in to know how we can help carry some of the burdens, at least to the Lord in prayer for you. And then some other times in very practical and tangible ways. And so it's one of the ways in which we want to grow in community, right? This is kind of an early initiative for being the kind of people who have people in our lives with what's really going on, not pretending like everything's okay and taking care of ourselves, instead allowing a community of people and living that kind of community with one another. And you guys have been really participative in that. And so just wanted to say thank you, and also just let you know, like, this is a meaningful and this isn't a gimmick. This is not some kind of like program. It's actually the body of Christ moving towards one another in love. And so as you get texts or emails or calls or whatever, like I encourage you, like, invite people in, let them know what's going on, let them know what you need, and see what God can do over the course of time as we soften our hearts towards one another. So that's been a really cool and super encouraging element of the past several months, this past quarter in particular. So, and then just a couple celebrations. On Easter Sunday, we had in my tenure our first time we did a 2-service Sunday. Obviously, COVID contributed some to that. We could have gotten more than all the people that were there in one room without COVID, but we had 200 folks at the services on that Sunday, and I think there were also 6 rabbits and 4 goats and 7 ducks and I think one horse. So there, it was a whole partridge in a pear tree there. But it was really awesome to see many of you that we hadn't seen in a long time come and be a part of the celebrating of the risen Savior and our risen Savior. And it was a really great day, and I felt like the joy of the Lord was able to enter our midst in a way that we hadn't experienced in a while, because of such absence of so many people. So it was a really cool and special day and special Sunday for all those that made that possible. I was really, really grateful. The other thing that was really fantastic was this night of worship that we got to be a part of over at the Owens farm, and it was just delightful. Dozens of families brought their kids and food, and we just connected with one another, and then worshiped together and prayed. And it was a really special night, very relaxed, it's like just like being a family together, and it was really special. So one of the things I want to let you know is that our plan is, the Owens have said they're open to it, is to do a fall version of this, kind of a fire pit, bonfire worship night sometime in the fall. And we'd love to have you be a part of that. So you'll be hearing about that more in the fall. But to have an opportunity to be together in an unhurried evening and sing the praises of the Lord, pretty special thing. So for all of you who came out, those of you who were part of leading, planning, preparing, and bringing that about, really, really grateful, and grateful to the Owens for their farm and the use of it this particular time. So last thing is just a couple areas that we are as a church, especially those of you that are significantly vested in, that we just need some help. We're in a spring kind of need for cleaning. We've been in our space, our building, about 2.5 years, and it shows. And so we have some opportunities. I think we've mentioned this in announcements. If you got some space, even for an hour or so on this Saturday, I'll be there. Becky will be there. We'd love to have you guys come and be a part of this painting day back in the kids wing. We're going to kind of reset everything to clean and effective, and I'd love to have you be a part of that. So you can sign up on the app and come and have some fun with us on Saturday morning, and actually afternoon. So either way, those are both good. Secondly is, and this is a pretty significant thing. I think this is what I'm going to say, like, as one of the things I think that's happened over the course of this last 14 months or so, is that slowly, when we had to all pull in and kind of be really concerned about, hey, how do we make sure we're all healthy? How do we make sure that the people we love are cared for? How do we think about our neighbor, and all that related to the COVID dynamic? Some of what I think has been a byproduct of that has been a little bit of like atrophy in us, to where we're a little stiff, and we're not sure what it looks like to move back out towards neighbor, towards friend, towards community, and also in particular tangible areas, in ways that have to move towards areas of need within the church. And I can't tell you, one of the major areas of need we have right now is just in the area of kids. We're like super short, super tight on any given week. Some of you have been so generous with coming and doing sometimes couple weeks in a row in order to make sure that kids classes can function and the kids can be cared for and invited to Jesus. And so I just want to say, if you've been a part of the kids ministry, even to be able to step in for these 2 months here prior to August, when we kind of head towards kind of a broader recruiting and a normalizing, we'd love for you to be able to just be available and kind of raise your hand. So we have a couple different volunteer and needs just opportunities for our body to be able to function well together. We have more families coming back, and we don't have the space to be able to have the kids in the kids area. So it gets really tricky. So if you would consider, like significantly consider whether or not you could be a part of this, even once a month or once every 3 weeks, for the next 3 months, for June, July, and August, that would be so significant for the health and function and a kind of trajectory towards more normalcy of our church. So I'd really want to invite you to consider that. You can sign up or even ask for questions on the app. So go to the RCC app, and it says there, how can I volunteer? I'll volunteer here. You can fill out your information, and we'll get back to you. But if you'd consider that, it'd mean a lot to us. And I think it's actually significant for the life of our church. So there's a lot of folks that are shouldering. There's a few folks that are shouldering a lot right now, and we need you. So if that's you, like, jump in. We need you. All right, that I believe brings us to the end. We're not going to go to thanks quite yet. Let me stop the share. Let's go to some questions. What questions might you have? All right. Oh, Joel, it's like you were reading my mind. I didn't see the question until just now. What are the biggest volunteer needs right now? We need a bass player because Joel Black. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think I just mentioned some of those particular key ones that we have. We do have some needs also on the worship team. If that's something that you have been considering or thinking about, we're going to be kind of rallying that, particularly in the fall. But if you're thinking about it and want to send an email to Priya David, she'll be glad to let you know kind of what that process looks like. So if you're an instrumentalist or a vocalist, love to have you be a part of that too. Again, when we're talking about, just want to be real clear, when we start talking about like calling and what does it mean to like live out how God's made you, it's not just like, here's the way in which you can serve our church. Like that's not what we're going to be going towards. So just know we're not spending a year talking about how you can like serve in kids or how you can serve on the worship team or serve in youth. Like those are all really important things. And for many of us, in order for us to be a healthy community, we need to be a part of that. So absolutely, it's a yes, but that's not the primary area of focus. It's the idea of like that we're made for something significant, that we're made for a plurality of ways in which the way God has made us is supposed to express itself out into the community, into our relationships, into our friendships, family, and work. So that's where we're going to be focusing a lot of our energy when it comes to calling. Just want to clarify that. So yeah, Joel, thanks for the question. Ivy, what you got? Ivy asks, are there plans to reboot equipping courses? Ivy, you are such an equipping girl. In-person training on days other than Sunday, once COVID seems to be behind us. Right, the famous phrase, once COVID seems to be behind us. The answer is absolutely yes. And in particular, some of our hope and goals and plans, very particular ones and specific ones, will be around areas of community and calling in particular, but also continuing to come under the areas of desire. Like we've got several people that have, there was a pretty significant area of interest around areas of Bible study. Like what do I do with my Bible? I understand how to read it now, spending a year reading my Bible. What do I do when I actually sit down and open it and want to study it and like kind of like dig into it? So we'll be doing some equipping courses around that in particular as well. Areas of prayer. So we're always going to be focusing on some of the basics, but we'll definitely be putting some emphasis around areas of calling, community, calling in community in particular, pulling those things together. We'll be focusing on areas of spiritual gifts and things like that this coming year. So the answer is yes, Ivy. So thanks for asking. All right. Elena, I know you mentioned the registrations for I should have my glasses on. You mentioned the registration for in-person services will remain. Will the kids' class sizes increase as more people start to come and make room for everyone who would like to attend? I know that's been one of the challenges. Great question, Elena. One of the challenges we have has been being able to try and keep the kids in a realistic, amounts of kids in the space in particular. But the other challenge we've had, candidly, has been just number of folks our ratios are very particular in order to make sure that the kids are safe and we're able to actually engage them effectively based on their age, et cetera. And we just haven't had enough folks to do that. And so we've had to keep some of the classes smaller because of a shortage of folks in the classrooms. So as we have more opportunity with more teachers, we would have the opportunity to at least increase some of those classes a little bit, some a little bit from there. But yeah, there are definitely tangible limitations, and I know that's frustrating. Some of you guys I know come, on a Thursday sometimes, and like, oops, the class where your son or your daughter would go into is already full, and so then you're left with the decision of trying to, do I bring them into the service or do I? So I know it's challenging, and again, this is one of those, like, over the summer we're gonna keep keeping our eyes open as to how we do this effectively, and we're gonna make every space possible available for kids to be able to be in the kids area. So, but this is one of those, like, we're trying to hang on, we're trying to make it through the summer session, through the reality of COVID kind of trickling to an end, people beginning to come back. We just don't have a robust kids volunteer machine behind us at this point, just because of what we're coming out of and with the COVID reality. So that's the plan. So kind of like as soon as more is available, it'll be available. Let me just say it that way. So hopefully that's helpful. That was helpful. If you have a follow-up question, Elena, definitely let me know. Ivy, yes, could you give us an update on search for the associate pastor? Yeah, well, that's at this point still kind of been put on pause as we there are plans to kind of figure out what some of the next steps look like, but right now it's been kind of put on pause until we have a full reboot. As we head into the new ministry year, we're going to be talking about that a little bit more as an elder board, and kind of timing and perspective and the broader implications of it. But at this point, yeah, it still remains on the pause section, and as soon as things move, you will absolutely know, we promise. But thanks for asking, Ivy. All right, any other questions? I am genuinely shocked there's not been one question around any of the mask reentry stuff. I guess, Elena, you brought up some of the thing around kids, but that has genuinely surprised me. So this is a space. I mean, this is us. We can talk about it as it is. All right, I know a couple of you guys are gonna have some more questions, but let me just say this too, as we talk about this kind of reentry, right? Some of the reopening in a broader sense, like it's a fresh new opportunity for us to love one another really, really well, and to be the kind of people who are not going to be like, oh, those people are still wearing masks, they must be afraid, they're afraid of, like, or all these people aren't willing to wear masks, they don't care about me. There's going to be all kinds of, like, we're gonna all be tempted to move towards or lean into things that are just not consistent with the gospel, not consistent with, like, saying, hey, I'm gonna like trust you. I'm gonna fill the gap with trust and assume that you're for me, I'm for you. I'm in this place, you're in that place, but I'm for you. And like, the day's coming when this won't be an issue. And so in the meantime, in the gap, we're gonna choose to love one another, be patient, and be forbearing of one another, being gracious, extending tons of grace in every possible direction. That's what it'll look like. And by the way, that's what it looks like to be believers together in a community of love. And that's what the world wants to see and wants to be a part of. So I just want to invite us again, as we move towards having, some things moved around, right? This is going to feel odd. I was listening to a podcast, and they were just talking about how there's we've been accustomed to a degree of fearful self-preservation, and rightfully so, because there was something so significant going on nationally and internationally. And now it's going to take some time. It's going to take some of us a little longer than others to kind of release our grasp around it, right? To kind of start releasing and letting go and being like, okay, like, it's going to be okay. But we're a little tight, I think, as a people. All of us, we all are. Everything was normal doesn't feel normal. So anyway, I just want to say, like, let's give ourselves time, and as people, we all go in different ranges at different times. So anyway, I just want to encourage one another, right? As you hear someone being frustrated in one direction or another, invite them back towards love. That's how we'll navigate through all of this in a really healthy, forbearing, loving way. So that's my invitation to each of you. So Lizzie, there you go. Are you able to be more specific about the roadblocks to hiring the associate pastor? And can you talk about any plans to hire a kids director or an interim solution for the kids director? Yes. On the specifics on the roadblocks, some of it's been like an allocation of trying to be wise about allocating funds that we don't have right now towards something that in the midst of a lockdown COVID season was just untenable to do. And right now, as we start looking towards renormalizing, we're a little bit away from what that might look like. And so to try and hire in like a fundamentally new step when there's a lot of still uncertainty and a lot of things to still kind of work out, it seems poor timing and just not the best stewardship we could do right now. So it's more a little bit of a kind of a paused holding on until we move that. As far as so hopefully that clarifies a little bit more. As far as the plans on the kids front, we're basically in the process of looking at a couple different options. We're trying to maybe do a little bit of reframing around both the kids director and kids coordinator type roles. And so we're in conversation. We actually had a conversation with someone that we're potentially interested in seeing whether they'd be interested in the kids director role. So that's right now a little bit up in the air as to that, if that's possible. So they're going to take a little bit of time to think about it, but that's kind of where we are. That the interim section has been cared for by people, candidly, like you, Lizzie, who have stepped in and are kind of helping from week to week move a process that's very robust, that was as well structured, well laid out, and well cared for, and by Corey, that we're able to kind of basically sustain and keep going through these summer months. So as you can imagine, this has been a really, really trying time on a variety of different fronts in ministry and church world, et cetera. And the kids front is not only no exception, but is one of the most significant ones. So for now, us being able to try and kind of through June and July, the hope would be that by August 1 at the latest, we would be able to have someone in place in the kids director front with some support, with some kids coordinators. So that's the plan around that at this point. So hopefully that answers your question. Of course, hey, by the way, if there's anything that like you wanted more specifics about, or we're as elders, and I'm more than glad to be able to have further conversations or more clarity around it. So by all means, if they're like, hey, actually, this is exactly what I was trying to understand, and there's always more opportunity to have these chats, discussions, emails, et cetera. So please feel free to follow up on that. You can obviously always email us at info@roswellchurch.org, or the elders at elders@roswellchurch.org. That's always an avenue that is open to you. So, all right. Well, it looks like we're at about 8:45. So if you have further questions, please feel free to get in touch with us. Once again, I want to say what a blessing it's been to be a part of during unprecedented times as a church, as a community, as a nation, as people, to be a part of such a beautiful community of people who are continuing to learn to love one another, who are serving, who are seeking to be gracious, who are being generous. Like we've weathered a pretty significant time, and I'm really, really proud of our community overall. And we have things that we're going to have to relearn to a degree. There's some of us have gotten kind of awkward at even trying to have conversations, and so we're going to relearn, but it's going to be okay, and we're going to get to do that together, and in the process, to hopefully be a blessing to the world. So. Anyway, grateful for each of you. And again, if you have questions, please reach out to us. Otherwise, I hope you have an absolutely fantastic evening. Thanks again for being part of this Town Hall number 3. Y'all have a good night.